just as we start on this bill, capital projects, how much is appropriated all funds on this bill?
$52.1 billion.
And of that $52.1 billion, do you have a sense of how much you anticipate to be dispersed during this budget year?
$9.5 billion.
Thank you. A few questions related to the bill as a whole. There is $150 million provided to support a second round of funding for the 10 regional councils in economic development. That's an increase of $20 million over last year. In addition, I see that there's around $70 million of tax credits that have been allocated. Is that going to operate the same way as it did this last year with the regional advisory groups, making recommendations? Is the legislature, Assembly, the Senate, majorities, minorities, others going to have a bit more involvement in the process of making some of those determinations, or at least recommendations?
Well, yes. Yes.
Do you have a sense of how?
How do you?
How that's going to happen? Or we don't have the exact plan, but yes, there will be more.
Yes, there will be more. The governor is moving more to make it more open to daylight and more member participation.
Thank you. I look forward to that. There's in the Economic Development Fund, there's for New York Works, I found $75 million in new funding. Yesterday we discussed the advisory task force for New York Works that is established through this budget. Will they? Well, let me just sense. Will the task force be making recommendations on this piece of it, or I know New York Works has multiple pieces, it appears, and so the Economic Development Fund, would it be the task force making the recommendations on that and on each of the pieces, the transportation parts, the parks part, and others?
No, just on the piece that relates to them individually.
But
that's the $75 million.
Okay, but the task force though has an overall responsibility for New York Works, or
yes.
or no? Okay, so your answer of no, only individually. I guess what I'm saying is
the people within it would be individual, but the response would be the overall group
with the task force. And on those, who's going to have the final say on that? Again, if the advisory board is or the task force is advisory, who's making?
In the end, it would end up being the executive. But remember, because these groups are put together to implement and speed up. So I don't see them having problems, because it's just a question of how, getting things done quicker. Because many of these things, they're commissioners and everybody else. So I don't see a conflict. But if it were to be conflict, I would assume the executive would have an ability to say what's best.
In the New York Works infrastructure projects, there's $101.7 million to improve and enhance water management, including dams and infrastructure, flood management. Do we have a list of those projects that may be funded under that $101 million? Do we have that? Do we know what those projects are going to be and which ones will be funded?
We don't have a list on any of the New York Work projects as of yet.
So that means my next question on the parks and recreation and the ORDA, the Olympic Development Authority, The 94 million going there, no list for that one?
No, yes, there is no list for that,
Yet.
but there is things out there that exist. They just haven't been put together yet. Because remember, this is implementing, as I said before, programs that are already there or programs that some people had been talking about doing. So it's going, once this is passed and become a bill, the first thing they're going to start doing is pulling it all together and looking to see how it fits into a program.
Okay.
But they have not done that in advance of us giving them the authority.
In spite of that, I got one more question. In transportation, there is a one-year DOT capital plan, $4.5 billion, including $1.6 billion for New York Works. Usually in the transportation program, we do have a list of items before we go. If we got
No.
transportation,
We don't normally, the transportation, we don't get a list, they do it. In other words, we, yeah. We don't, we in the past, and when we have done this, it's 2 years that we haven't done anything. But
Right.
when we do it, they have a list. We just give them the number. We usually don't see the list until later, usually after we give them the money. And it's the same thing here. There are programs out there they're preparing, you know, because you always know what you're going to do next, but they haven't put it together and lined it and said, that's what's going to go into this 1.1 billion. They do, whatever the number is. But they will do it later.
Okay,
And the governor will put together a bill. The executive will give us a bill at some point and says, not a bill, but give us a list of what it's going to be, but not now.
we've often said, or subject to an MOU or maybe including that, but I've heard rumors that there's one, circulating. Perhaps it's only tentative and not.
I haven't seen it.
All right. I haven't seen it either, Mr.
I haven't
Farrell.
heard of it either.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Farrell.